Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Dance to Oneness podcast. We're on episode 23. And this week, our episode is called The Business of Awareness. And we have Julia Sotas here, Julia Sotas Mattis. And some of you may know her, some of you may not. She's an Access Consciousness Facilitator. She's also a Talk to the Entity Facilitator and a Right Voice for You Facilitator. And Julia's been creating a global online business for many years now. She started very young and she's been using the tools of Access Consciousness and using her awareness really to create her business to be what it is today. So this week we're talking about the business of awareness. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, Amy. How are you? Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. I'm excited.
So awareness is something that's it's just sort of a yucky word, really. I mean, I think when we start doing, I know some of you are brand new and maybe haven't heard of Access Consciousness, and I have people, I know listening to my podcast, listening to your podcast who have been doing Access for like ever. But awareness is, I wanted to talk about awareness today because I'm starting to have awareness of what awareness actually is that I didn't know that it was, that I'm really excited about. and so I wanted to talk about that a little bit because, when you first, for me, for a long time, I thought awareness was a curse. And I was like, why do I have to be so aware? Or like I would be able to I would think about something and then it would show up in my life instantly and I'd be like, I don't want that. Like one time I was watching a TV show and then I thought about this other TV show, and then 5 minutes later on the TV they were watching that TV show. It's like stuff like that all the time, and I'm like, I don't want that. I just want to be normal. And so awareness is one of everybody has awareness. Some people cut it off more than others, but it really is it is the most powerful substance, more powerful than money, more powerful than power over others, more powerful than a whole lot of things. But it is so esoteric and misunderstood that it's very, I don't know if futuristic is the word for it, but it's not normal. And I think it's something that's going to have a lot more value in the future, in the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. I'm not even going to say in the next 10 or 20 years because I don't think it will be. But, it is gaining more and more traction, but it is such a powerful thing. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today.
Yeah, when you picked the topic, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
She picked the business of awareness as her topic, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to even talk about, Julia? Because it's like that energy of the word awareness. So it's like I was like, I'll happily talk to you about awareness in a private conversation, but like you want to get on a podcast and talk to people about awareness, like the energy of awareness is like what? It's kind of like being, like for ages, like Dane just had the Being You Day, and for years Dane's been talking about being you and the infinite being, and every time he does, it's kind of like, what?
Yeah, it's like
what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And awareness has that same thing. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And so like, why is that? Like, are we so invested in having the answer and being right or not being wrong that we actually don't even want to look at this topic of awareness?
Well, thanks for asking it that way, because that's so much what it's about. And that you've heard me as we've talked over the last few years, I have realized, I've been talking about the Rightness clearing loop all the time. And so what is the Rightness clearing loop, for those of you who might not know? It's this clearing loop. So using the Access Consciousness clearing statement that is designed to get you out of needing to be right. And I didn't, Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness, always says you can either be right or you can be free. And I have had no interest in being free. And I've had a lot of interest in being right. And so much of the conversations that we have with each other, the things that we do, are designed to, make us know that we're right. And that's not a bad thing either. It's like we as sensitive beings have all decided that we're innately, inherently wrong and bad and evil and vicious and awful. And if we were ever to expose that, it would be a terrible thing, maybe the end of the world. And so we have to make up for that by always proving that we're right, making the right choice, picking the right place to go for dinner, picking the right life partner, picking the right food, eating the right way, looking the right way, having the right amount of money, which isn't usually millions of dollars. It's somewhere in the middle that makes you look normal. And so it's all about getting your life right. And that is not freedom. That is a prison. And most people don't even know that they're imprisoned. So yeah, that's such a great point that you're bringing up. It's like that need to be right. I remember saying that to a family member who didn't do Access. And, she's very, very intelligent. And I brought up this idea of, she's like, well, what are you learning in Access Consciousness? And asking me questions. And I said, well, one of the things I've been looking at a lot is like how in conversations and like in interactions, like everything is about one person proving they're more right than the other. And then the response is them being more right than the other. And she just sort of made a blank face and walked away. And she was like, there's no way to put that. And there's no way for her to be right about that. And it was just this like, and just walk away. And that's sort of what we do with these other things like awareness and, because we have to uphold, a right life and be a good person. And all of that requires judgment. None of that is about being the contribution that you are to others. And, you can't actually be a contribution, or at least know the contribution that you are, if you have to be right all the time. It just don't work.
It really doesn't. And, I've been looking at this more and more too. And I also did a session with Gary, and everything was about being right.
Yeah.
And I was like cringing because I was like, I didn't realize I had so much of this going on, and so what I've been looking at too, it's
awful.
how.
And then no, we had a lag. Go ahead.
So if you're more invested in being right or making yourself wrong, right, you actually can't receive the contribution of the universe. Mm-hmm. You've cut off your receiving. And so you're talking about awareness. So what is awareness?
Yeah. So, well, the other thing too, so I think the thing with awareness is you can't have it when you need to be right. And what is awareness? Awareness is, this is a very advanced conversation.
I know.
Why did you bring this on your podcast? I'm just so excited. I wanted to talk about it. So let's just make a disclaimer right now. If you are listening, we are about to proceed into advanced podcast. But the thing, like when you were saying you had a session with Gary, and it can be so disheartening because it's like, what? Like, yeah, everything in my life, like I've had so many times where I've had like 2 or 3 weeks where I walk around like a zombie, being like, after a conversation with Gary, being like, what am I even doing here? Like, I have, like, based on like the possibility for consciousness and these standards, like I've been mean to this person subtly. I've been mean to this person subtly. I have destroyed this in my life. I have destroyed this. I am super cruel to my husband, and I had no idea. And I thought that I was this really nice person who was like really awesome and, kind, and then I'll see somebody else, and it's like when you expose these things to yourself, then you can see it in everybody else, and you're like, I thought that person was nice, and everything that they're doing is also just to prove that they're being kind, and they're not. It's not kind. They're baiting people with doing nice things so they can also subtly gaslight and get all this stuff underneath. And I'm like, that's me. That's what I've been doing. And I'm just like walking around my house, like walking around the world, like, what do I even like? There's no, but that is still more need to be right.
Yeah.
And so like it's this very painful phase too, that where you are still in judgment and still judging yourself and needing to be right, but then you also have all this awareness about yourself, and then those two together, it's a very uncomfortable spot to live in.
The first time Gary pointed out to me that I needed to be right was in a class. And so it was like at the end of the class, it was on the last day, and it was a class in New York. And I remember like getting a taxi to the airport, like crying, like cringing, like, first of all, he had exposed me.
Yeah.
In a room full of people. Yeah. Second of all, like, I was shocked. Like, oh my God, I need to be right. I thought I was wrong.
Totally.
And almost like it would have been better if I was wrong. Because if I was wrong, then people have to take me out of the wrongness. But if I'm right, then I'm just a fucking bitch. And then what I found myself then, like on the plane home, was like getting upset. But then I was like, oh, wait 1 second. Now I'm like going to the wrongness of me. So now I've exposed where I need to be right. Now I'm making that wrong.
Right.
So even if you make your
lead back to rightness anyways.
Yeah. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like either one is the same side of the coin. It's a different side of the same coin.
Totally. So, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Your only choice is consciousness. And it's like, well, what the fuck is that?
So I think for me though, the key is in all this though as well is not judging myself when I find these things. Like you're talking about, like being kind. Like, what if you could be kind to you when you do expose yourself, or when you are seeing these things? Like, what if you didn't judge that you make yourself right or wrong?
Yeah.
Because I suppose, is that the piece where then you can actually have the awareness if you don't judge it?
Yep.
And when you have the awareness, then you can change it.
Yeah. Totally. And it's like, exactly. And it's like, that's so brilliantly said. I don't even know what to put on top of that. But like, yes, it's like when we need to, when we realize things about ourselves. Recently you were at this class, at the advanced body class in Houston, Amy, and he said to one lady, there's not too much that's nice about you. And it's true, and he said similar things to me, and out of no judgment and total caring, and it's true. And then when I face that and don't have judgment of it, my life gets so much better. And you can't even comprehend that, because that doesn't exist anywhere in human reality. And the other thing he said in that class is, like, most of you can't have consciousness because it will force you, or it is required that you look at things about yourself that are off color, things about yourself that you desperately don't want to know. And that vulnerability, just like you're saying, it's like to realize where and for those of you out there, not all of you have this going on. This is something Amy and I can talk about because we've been, but it's like each of you will find something from this conversation. And, but it's just this space where it's like, you have to get really super kind to yourself also in order to do this. Just like you were saying, like, if you are realizing, I realized so many things that I had done. And like when you have a situation and it doesn't work out, but you think it doesn't, you're not quite sure why it doesn't work out. But you're like, but it doesn't work out. And then you maybe think the other person's wrong, but it just has that weird feeling. And then, you realize like a year later or 2 years later that the entire thing fell apart because of the way that you acted. And it's so difficult to look at. It takes so much vulnerability. And I realized also, like, looking at this situation and this situation and this situation and this situation, and, you know, that looking at all these situations and realizing that my point of view was only one point of view that wasn't the most conscious point of view. And it's like everybody else had their point of view about the same situation, and your whole past is erased. I'm like, I'm a pinhead. I only see my point of view, which is a ridiculous, limited, it's one person's point of view. And so that is, but this is where you receive your godlike powers.
But this is where you don't have awareness when you have a point of view. So awareness is not having a point of view, right? It's just receiving like the information. So it's like, because you say, like, when we were talking about the right and wrong, so what's the definition of consciousness is consciousness, what is it, Julia? Consciousness
includes everything
and judges nothing. So, and consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. So even like, say you are looking at a situation, right? And you had a fallout with a friend and you said this and she said that and she did this and you did that, right? Consciousness would include all that. It wouldn't judge any of it. It wouldn't judge her. It wouldn't judge you. There'd be no right or wrong. It would just be information. It would just be this information. That gives you awareness. But the minute you go to, I'm right, she's wrong, I'm bad, she's worse than me, I'm a bitch, she's a bitch, whatever, you cut off your awareness, you go to the right and wrong, and then you have to separate from you and from the other person and from the world around you.
Brilliantly said. Wow.
So we're all asking for awareness, some of us. But do we really want awareness? And this is what Gary said to me. He goes, you don't want consciousness. You want to be right. And that's the thing. You can't have both. You can't be right and be conscious. And this is why we see so much spiritual bullshit these days. Spiritual superiority. People pretend they're right. They're like, I'm so right. I'm so spiritual. I'm so right. And it's like, no, you're not right. You're you are right according to your point of view, but you're not conscious. Because the minute you have to be right or be wrong, you're not being conscious. But most people don't want consciousness. They want to be right. Yeah. Wow.
It's funny. You'll have to put advanced podcast on this, but then once you put advanced podcast, and everybody's going to want to look at what the advanced thing is, and then they're going to have to hear this dark conversation.
Well, last week I had Connor Hill.
Actually, the door to total lightness.
I did. Last week I had Connor Hill, and we had the what was it? The rightness of being wrong, or something like that.
So your podcast guests are taking a beating lately.
Yeah, they are. We're going deep in the last few weeks, and we end up talking for like way over the time. So don't worry about it.
That's great. Yeah, and then it's like, one of the cool things too is another quote from Gary Douglas is, you can only receive once you know you're a contribution. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I have to know I am a contribution before I can receive. And that's amazing too, because it's like, contribution is one form of receiving. It's like, if you are not receiving what you'd like to receive, you want to ask, what can I contribute? And truly being a contribution to somebody or something, or to the universe. I mean, contributing to the universe is as simple as going, good morning.
Yeah.
Who am I today? And what grand and glorious adventures will I have today? That's a contribution, because your happiness is a contribution, from, which will show up as a result of asking that question. It's like, and I've been realizing so much that the more that I truly contribute, not contribute because I think it'll make me look good, not contribute because I think it'll make me a nice person, that's where a lot of the contribution that people do comes from, is to prove to themselves that they're a nice person. It's not wrong, but it also isn't a true contribution. But when you truly contribute, that is receiving. And it's not karma, that's not how it works, but it's reciprocal. And it's like, you are, I was going to do a telecall called Beyond Entitlement, but nobody showed up, so I had to cancel it. But I've been looking at this thing too of entitlement, like where I, would, where I would rather have somebody provide for me than provide for myself. Because I've noticed lately that my business isn't growing past a certain point, and I've been looking at that, like, what's it going to take to grow this and become everything it can be? Because it's like the information is there, I have infrastructure in my business, I have a large clientele base, like there's a lot going on, it's really great stuff, and it's not growing. So I'm like, what energetically do I need to change? And this is what I ask myself, and I know you do the same thing, Amy, like when something's not working, like what needs to change here? And so I started asking some questions, and one of the things that I got to was that I really like the energy of being a kept wife. And so I will create to a certain point, and then I won't create beyond that, because I like the energy of being taken care of. I was like really nicely taken care of by my father, and I know I've had a lot of lifetimes where I've been, the queen or the princess, or or even the the person who had it all, and where the goal was not to have to work and create and contribute, but to receive, but not receive. It's actually more of a taking. And so so I got to this, and I realized, oh, it's so true. Like, it's such a warm energy for me. And I talked to Gary about it. I said, how do I get over this? I'm like, I really like this. This isn't something I want to change, but it's hindering my business, and it's hindering my ability to contribute consciousness to the world. Because if my business isn't going to grow, and he said, watch The Sopranos until you can't stand it anymore. And so The Sopranos is this show about, have you seen it, Amy?
I don't think I've seen it, but it's an Italian thing, isn't it?
It's totally an Italian thing. And the wife on the show, her husband is the Don, the boss of the organized crime ring. And she is totally this kept woman, and she takes care of her 2 kids, and she's such a nice, homemaker, and she's Italian. And growing up, I had an aunt who was Italian, and I just wanted to have, like, oh, her house was so beautiful, and there was such a warmth, and there was such an energy to that. And so that's part of what I created, is because that's what I desired. That's what my ask was, 25 years ago. And so that's what I created. And there's so many wonderful things about that. There's so many wonderful energies in my life with being married to an Italian family, the way that my stepkids are, the way that my husband is, the way that we decorate our house, the way that we cook Italian food. Like, I love being part of an Italian family. But I also, so it's like I can keep that part that I love, but it's also this part where I'm not willing to create beyond that comfort zone. And so I've been watching this, and just looking. I'm starting to get sick. I'm on the second to last season. and it is working. But it's like, the facilitation was just like, Gary said, it's not, he's like, he said, if you have that point of view, you are a child of consciousness who is waiting for your allowance. And that's really the energy that I've lived my life by, is waiting for my allowance. And he said, that means that you have to sit around and wait for people who have more than you to give to you.
Mm.
And he said, but does anybody really have more than you? And I started crying, and I was like, no, like, nobody has more than me. But if I decide that, then I won't contribute. I will only receive or take or whatever, which these are kind of, I'm talking in absolute terms, and that's not really the case for me. You know, I do contribute a lot and I create a lot and I do a ton, but there was this ceiling, and that was the energy that really was creating that. And so I'm so grateful to have the awareness, because things are already starting to grow and change, and the tools are working. But it is really cool to recognize where these stopping points come from, and that we can look at these stopping points, work through them, and then everything can expand, you know, and everything in your life stops based on like one crazy ass point of view. And when you change that one crazy ass point of view, you know, you're unlimited in what you can create. And so for me, it was like a little bit hard to swallow that, because I've always like been like, I want to work really hard, and I want to contribute a lot, and da da da. But then where I also have this total opposite point of view where I don't. And so, you know, it's been really exciting to figure it out, that that's what was going on secretly, and that I had this point of view secretly and I didn't know it. And then to uncover that and see it for what it is just, this is awareness.
So that's the business of awareness.
That's the business of awareness. It's the vulnerability to look at why you're catching yourself up, or how powerful you are, or whatever, and really get that you can, you know you want to be an Italian wife, and that's the most you want to be. And then you can have that awareness, and that is more powerful than anything on the planet, is to be aware of the choices that you're making, because nobody's aware of the choices that they're making. You know, people think that things just happen to them, but nothing happens to you. You know, you create everything in your life. So it's so empowering to get to the bottom of things, you know?
Yeah. Even if it's uncomfortable for a while.
Yes. Very uncomfortable. That was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. We so avoid being uncomfortable, yet uncomfortable is where everything's changing. And awareness is not comfortable. Like, that's not comfortable to look at, you know?
No, it's not. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I'm a fucking gold digger or something? You know, but it's like, I have been in a billion lifetimes. And is it a judgeable offense? No. Have I also been the provider in so many lifetimes? Yes. Is that judgeable? No. It's just, we have to just look at what's truly going on. And it is fabulous when you get to and the awareness grows and grows, and it just becomes this beautiful world that keeps getting better and better. And that consciousness.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And if you just don't judge it, then you can change it. So what if the business of awareness was, like you just said, look, that's the key to having greater, to having more, for your business expanding, your relationships, your home, whatever it is.
Yeah. Totally.
That's the gold.
That's the gold.
Oh, thank you, Julia. So we're at about time. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? You left them with a lot already. But
no, I mean, the only thing I would love to leave you guys with is keep asking, how does it get better than this? And it will.
Brilliant.
You know, just keep asking that one question. You don't have to answer it. Ask the universe, and the universe will show you.
I love it. And that's also having gratitude for the awareness.
Yeah.
How does it get any better than this? Okay. How does it get any better than this? It's uncomfortable. Okay. How does it get any better than this?
Totally.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julia. This was a brilliant conversation.
Thank you for having me. And
if people are looking for you, where can they find you? Your website's in the description. But
awesome.
Is there?
Yep. So you can find me on my website. I do private sessions. I do a lot of classes, all kinds of different stuff. So,
And you're www.juliasotas.com.
Yes.
Yes.
That is correct. juliasotas.com. Here, I'll just.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Julia. We will be back again next week with another show. So thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.